Hi, I'm Don Mooers, and welcome to Montgomery Week in Review. The Superintendent of Education of Montgomery County has proposed a budget for 2016 and submitted it to the County Council. Fred Evans, who is on this show on a regular basis, has all the information in his own special commentary. Thank you. The Board of Education has taken up the issue of what our vacation days should be called for our public schools. Very controversial subject. Jane DeWinter, who is also here on a regular basis commenting about education issues, has all of the sides of this thorny issue. December issue of the Beacon, one of our great publications in the DC metropolitan area, has information about how we can live longer and better, and all sorts of other information on economics, health, and so much more. Stuart Rosenthal, who is the editor and publisher of the Beacon, has all the details. MCM, the mighty Montgomery Community Media, which will, by coincidence, be celebrating 30 years this year, celebrates the volunteers who work hard to make the content and programs come alive for the people of Montgomery County. Tony Spearman-Leach, who heads up MCM's programs and so much more, is here to elaborate. Fred.
How are you?
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
So the budget, no issues with this year's
Oh,
budget.
never an issue with the budget.
Less money to do more, right? Isn't that what the superintendent's come forward with?
I don't know what if that's exactly what he said, but the budget, the proposed budget
Right.
for next year, and it goes through a process that most of us know about, is at the fine figure of $2.4 billion. And for those of you who don't know, that's about half of the overall operating budget for the entire county.
Which, if I recall, that's a fairly significant increase from last year's
It's
budget.
it's about a 3% increase. We are increasing, just some statistical information for folks. We will have over 153,000 students, if I have my data correct. Right now, that'll be an increase of about 2,500 students. For the last 7 years, we've been increasing student enrollment at about a pace of 2,000 students a year.
Now, we're one of the most diverse jurisdictions, one of the most diverse school systems in the world. How many kids do we have?
Absolutely.
Countries?
We have last count,
Okay.
198 countries, 136 different language groups.
And we also, it's not, the streets aren't paved with gold here. We have a lot of the free and reduced meals.
We have 35% of our
Wow.
population is on free and reduced lunch, and I think that's obviously significant
Sure.
in terms of how we staff the schools and where staff are sent. The budget will include, and I'm not going to get into the specific details, but will include increase in positions. We have 22,000 employees in Montgomery County Public Schools. About a little more than 11,000 of those employees are teachers, are classroom teachers.
Yeah. Are teachers staying on in the classroom longer, or are we seeing the kind of turnover that would be normal for this kind of size population?
My sense is that most of the highest rate of turnover has been occurring at the administrative and the administrative slots. That I hear, this is informal dialogue, but I hear discussions from teachers about, gee, in 7 or 8 years we've had 3 principals, as an example. Now, there are a variety of reasons. One is my generation, the baby boomers, are retiring, so that causes it. But I think the position has become much more difficult,
and also breathing down their necks. There's so many more accountability formulas and out of curriculum central, Hungerford, Carver Center. They can measure people much more, measure these principles.
No question, and you're being measured, and schools are being measured obviously on the rate of performance of their students and how they're doing.
And I think one of the things that contributes to that is I think there's been much more turnover in the central office in the last 4 years than there was previously. And so when people are leaving central office, frequently people get pulled out of schools, out of administrative positions there. So that just increases the turnover at school level.
You know, I'm going to ask the question that
ahead.
everyone out there really wants to know.
Yes, sir.
We've just had an election, there has been a very unexpected result. So we have a new administration.
At the state level.
At the state level.
Yes.
And so now the big question becomes, what impact is that going to have with the Montgomery County Public Schools? What are you hearing out there?
Good question.
Well, that's a great question. Most of the funding obviously comes locally, but we do depend on state funding, and because we have, at last estimate, a $1 billion shortfall is the last figure I heard. It
and
alternates.
that's mostly
the state.
construction, or is
That's
that?
the state. No,
that's
that's
the state overall budget,
operating
right,
that's right.
State operating budget. We're not even. We don't have enough time in the show about construction. That's a whole nother set of funding. But I think that's going to be an issue. Where does the new administration make cuts, and how much of it will be in education, and how will that affect Montgomery County? We're the 17th largest school district in the country, the largest one in the state of Maryland. And I don't have an answer for you, except I think it's going to affect us. I really do.
Well, and it's interesting because to mention construction, I mean, the Montgomery
Oh.
County school system and county PTA and county delegation has been working in the last couple of years to try to get a big chunk of construction money
Absolutely.
like Baltimore got. And I think that they probably had expectations that had Anthony Brown been elected, this might be the year. And I think they can kiss that idea goodbye. Yeah.
Revised expectations.
Yes.
What can we expect in this budget? What's your prognostication?
Well, it's I wish I had a good prognostication. It's going to be interesting to see now how the county council reflects on it, and whether or not some other ancillary battles will affect the discussion about how much money the school system actually receives, and what other agencies are competing for those same dollars. That'll be a big factor. I think we have traditionally funded our school budgets. I think it will be funded, but where the cuts will come will be an interesting scenario.
We can't wait to have you back to talk more about
Oh,
this.
yeah.
Thanks, Fred.
Thank you.
Jean Winter, how are you?
I'm very well, thank
So
you.
we go from the money
Right.
with the school system to what's become a very emotional issue, and
Issue of semantics.
well, the semantics,
yes.
and for me it's very interesting because I watched one of the national broad programs. They remembered back Kensington was the town that banned Santa Claus, and now we're the county that's banning Christmas holidays or whatever the name. So it's kind of interesting. It's great fodder for late night jokesters.
Well, in Montgomery County, I'll just throw out this very esoteric fact. There also has been that there was declared that mooning people is not illegal in Montgomery County, so we could be known for that too.
Can we, guys, do we want to moon our recommended
Let's stick to
Anyway,
religion.
yes, we'll stick back
Okay,
to the
so why don't you
calendar.
tell us lay the groundwork for this issue?
Right.
How did
Well,
it
you
start?
know, if people who are familiar with the school system, have had kids in there or whatever, are aware that, well, we do have some Christian holidays off. We have Easter off and Christmas. And then there's also some Jewish days,
Rosh Hashanah,
Rosh
Yom
Hashanah,
Kippur.
Yom Kippur.
Right.
And some of them, like the Monday after Easter, that's actually a state mandated holiday. And but in any case, there's been some advocacy over the last probably at least 5 or 6 years for recognition and day and time off, a school day off for Muslim holiday, and particularly in the fall and for Al-Eid. And
Well, the Eid
yeah.
it goes around.
Right,
it's
you're right.
a lunar, so it changes
it
every year.
changes. It does. It changes
Moves all the way
every
around,
year.
right.
And there's also been discussion. I mean, sometimes whether Ramadan also changes, and
Ramadan,
whether
right.
you know, the last day of it or the first day of it would be off, whatever.
I think we should have the whole month.
Have
Well,
school at night
Personally-
instead of in the
Okay.
daytime.
Good.
I mean, I do think that I had served on the MCPS calendar committee 4 or
Okay.
5 times in the last decade, and I know that, you know, there were other things that came up from the Muslim community too, and a lot of them were very legitimate, pointing out that, you know, in the classroom, teachers aren't really always that aware of when the holidays are, and you know, parents being upset that perhaps class parties with food were being scheduled during Ramadan when some students might be fasting and things like that. So there certainly
Interesting.
are a lot of things that could be
Yeah.
done to increase awareness. So that's been sort of a constant.
But I think, I mean, if I understand this correctly, that one of the, we look at other groups that we have a huge Indian population here. We have Chinese populations. We've got populations, as Fred laid out, from all over the world.
Exactly.
Is where do you continue on from there? I mean, there's a holiday in religion and nationality every day of the year, and often multiple ones.
Right.
So,
and I think that was the position that the school board was trying to stay with. I know that over the years, whenever they've talked about days off, like for example, about 6 or 7 years ago, they started giving off the half day, the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. And within the calendar committee, it really was a discussion about whether that was going to make more teachers take the whole day off, and whether that was going to end up right, and students as well. And so I do know that that's a concern. So I think that one of the issues and why this became kind of more of a hot button issue was that the school system had in the past, I mean, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur were presumably days off, not because of honoring the religion or respecting the religion, but because so many students and teachers were absent. But there is no hard and fast threshold, and that's what.
Can I say something? I'm just going to say this as a Montgomery County resident and as a person who's mentored and worked with many, many young students.
speak it out, Tony. Speak it out.
I love that we're debating what days to have off. What are we going to do to give our students more contact hours in the classroom?
More days on.
That's right, more days
So
on.
days off.
We are talking about students that are underperforming on standardized tests. They are underperforming in the sciences and the maths. And what are we debating? We are debating what days to give them off. Truthfully, I don't feel that religious holidays have any place on a public school calendar.
Well, then you will be very pleased, because what the school board had done, and which was a big surprise to people out in the community, was that they stripped the days off of the religious holiday, naming of it.
Yeah,
There's
not
still
the
they
days
will
off.
still be days off, but they just won't be labeled as that. And I think, I mean, other places around us, Fairfax does that. They're just listed as days off.
Is there consideration? I mean, getting back to the Eid and the last day of Ramadan, and then for major
like
Hindu,
Lunar New
and
Year
then,
and
all these
yeah.
things, and within the Chinese community, is what thought has been given to ensuring that students who do have religious issues on those days and celebrations need to be off? I mean, is that where we're going to, a policy of makeup, a policy of
that's
additional?
already
Well,
been-
they
What about-
already
that's
have
not
a
an issue then.
policy.
Thank you.
That's all.
Well, but it is an issue. I mean, because they do have a calendar where all of those things are noted, and they're not supposed to be giving big tests, and they're also supposed to kids, if they miss it because of religious reasons.
That's the final word.
Yeah.
Thank you. We'll be right back after these messages. And we're back. Stuart Rosenthal, welcome back.
Thank you, Don.
The annual or the monthly show with you, monthly time with you, is always a high point for Montgomery Weekend
Thank
Review.
you very much.
Stem cells.
Yes.
Let's go right to it. What's going on?
Macular degeneration is the leading cause of blindness in older adults. The retina is what we see with, and the macula is the very center of it, and people who have this degeneration lose their central vision, and it gradually spreads, and it's devastating. And there's been no cure for it. There are some treatments that slow it down a little bit. So there was an attempt to use stem cells to see if they could use embryonic stem cells, which of course are controversial because they're from embryos. But to try this, they can be any cell in the body. They convert them to retinal cells, and they inject them into the eye in the hopes that they will go and replace those cells in the macula. But the first thing they were doing when they were testing this is to see is it safe. Because a big concern, especially with embryonic stem cells, is that they could convert to anything and they might become cancerous.
Right.
So they had to do a safety study first. So they took 18 people, half seniors and half children who have a congenital condition in the retina, and they gave them treatments to see over a period of 3 years would it be unsafe for them.
Okay.
And more than half, not only was it no problem of safety, but more than half had their vision improve, which is unheard of. It's never happened before with macular degeneration. It doesn't just stop it or slow it down, but they
Fantastic.
actually got their vision back.
Okay.
So this is an astounding study, and the results were really very surprising, and I thought worth noting, although it'll be a long time before this comes to a doctor near you, of course.
You know what's amazing is that in so much of the health news that you provide, we can expect to see this in the regular press about 6 to 12 weeks from now. So hearing it first in
You heard it
Montgomery
here.
Weekend
Right,
Review, it's
right.
fantastic.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, anything else with stem cells?
No, that was the story on that
All right.
subject.
There's senior abuse has been an issue not only in Montgomery County but throughout this
Nationally,
nation,
absolutely.
throughout the world.
Right.
Montgomery County, though, is doing something about it.
Yes, there's a new office in the, a new division, I should say, in the Office of the State's Attorney in Montgomery County, which is dedicated now to the prevention and prosecution, investigation and prosecution of crimes against older adults and vulnerable adults. And the idea is they're focusing on, like you say, abuse and neglect also on the kinds of financial and other abuse that occurs from caregivers and family members. A lot of it is actually done by people who are very close to the people themselves. And there are just a lot of very serious issues, and the feeling was that 1 out of 10, they say, per year, 1 out of 10 seniors every year is abused in some way. I find that a little hard to swallow, but that was from a survey.
Are they calling things like financial,
Everything, yeah,
stealing
including
is considered
scams,
abuse?
right,
yeah,
right,
okay.
right.
I
All
find
right.
10%.
Taking advantage of people.
I find only that 10% is
think
a
it's
low
low.
number.
It might-
yeah,
it
I mean,
might be.
looking
Yeah.
through. I mean, we've got
Yeah.
especially when you've got so much wealth in this community. Not that seniors, not that all seniors are wealthy, but you do have wealth, and you've got folks who are coming in as caregivers, often coming from another country, more
Right.
restricted funds, and to
Right.
have that, and then as the trust builds, you're giving more and more opportunities.
true.
Sign checks sometimes.
that's
All
true.
right.
But I was going to say is that I feel like that's a little bit unfair because a lot of times it's people's own children too.
Yes.
So
Right.
let's just
Yes.
not say that.
No,
it's-
I
people
just,
who
I
take
just,
care of them are
no, I'm
really
just
Yeah.
familiar from a couple of things
far
just,
beyond what
just
they
that
need to.
recently happened, came out of
Yeah.
that
Okay.
scenario. But the kids,
Yeah.
Yeah.
there's nothing like
Yes.
an older parent that
Sign
brings out the
here,
best
Mom.
in
Right, yes,
kids.
yes,
Exactly.
right.
We've got another
Yes.
story.
Chinese stocks. I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of attention being paid to emerging markets and then investing internationally. And there are more and more Chinese stocks trying at least to get onto the stock exchange. But be aware that a lot of them are not such legitimate companies.
If it's too
And-
good to be true, maybe
yeah.
it is.
Apparently about half of all Chinese stocks that have been on the market in the last 2 years or 3 years have been kicked off by the SEC for one kind of fraud or failure to file financial statements or whatever.
Okay.
And part, I understand, an article explains, is because in China a lot of foreign investment is not permitted directly in Chinese companies. So when you buy Chinese stock, you're not really buying stock in the Chinese company. You're buying stock in a holding company that's located in an offshore island, or you're buying stock in a subsidiary or whatever, and you have very little control over the company. And the companies don't respond to the SEC when it comes to filing all the reports or having their statements audited and whatnot.
So are people
30 seconds.
purchasing these stocks through an exchange?
On the
like
market, on
over-
the New York
but
Stock
through-
Exchange, on the over the
So
counter.
is
yeah.
there any vetting process for getting listed? Do you
There-
think
well, that's
that
the
being
problem.
on there would be?
They circumvent that in part by using these holding companies. They buy a U.S. shell company and they become part of that company. So doesn't look like a new company or a Chinese company. It looks like a company that's been around for a long time, but it's really their company. And then they screw around with things. So it's very risky at the moment. I say this as someone who has bought some Chinese stock recently and then read the article. So be careful and watch your P's and Q's or whatever.
Stuart, as always, one of the most informative sections of this show we ever
you.
get. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We turn from Stuart Rosenthal to the great Tony Spearman-Leach. How are you?
Doing
Greatness
well.
to greatness.
Thank you for having us back. We're always a pleasure to be with you.
Well, let's look. I mean, this is your station. We're here at your beck and call. So, we are at your service. What 2014?
Absolutely.
What is it about 2014 that stands out for you for Montgomery Community Media?
As you noted, at the start of the program, we have entered our 30th anniversary, and it's been a 30-year love affair with Montgomery County. We are the first voice of the residents. We are the first voice of the organizations and businesses that call Montgomery County home. And what makes us work? Teams and people like you bringing us over 14,000 hours of content, over 800 volunteers. We couldn't do it without you. And what's really important to note is that we have to thank each one of you and recognize you for all the hard work that you do. And so we do a program each year called the Montes. And we have a phenomenal host. A phenomenal host,
Who might that
spectacular,
be? Who might
right here in front of us.
Really? What a surprise.
Who is the voice of the Montes.
The voice of the Montes.
And-
Welcome, everybody, to the Montes.
And you know, when you look at the number of people that have done phenomenal things, we have an award named after Bruce Adams from
Sure.
the Volunteer Center for the county. And we had Tom Hoopengardner, who was given that award in the name because of Bruce Adams, because he has dedicated his life to the mission of educating, connecting, and informing the people of Montgomery County.
You know, one of the things that brings home to me about MCM is as I host the Montes, it's the one evening that I have to put faces to the names of the programs that I
That's
watch
right.
diligently. And so many incredibly dedicated people, so many people with different backgrounds and stories that brought them the passion. Why did I want to present this show? And,
That's right.
And you've got the Freedom of Speech station on 19, and then you have this incredible, these professionally, I mean, even the volunteer and plus the professional employees you have at MCM, who've just phenomenal programming that then many of them go, I mean, those are then taken in other places, other sites around this area, around the country, who love your programming. It must be very, very satisfying to you.
It is probably one of the best contributions we make, not only to this county, but to this region. You know, people have to remember, Bruce DePoit, who you
Came
see-
out of here.
He
That's
came
right.
out of here. Melissa Millay came out of
Former
here.
student of mine at Gaithersburg
I mean,
High School.
let's look at how many
Sure.
news anchors that we have and news reporters we have created out of this station.
And directors and producers and
Absolutely.
cameramen and camerawomen. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And,
Photogs.
and the producer for this program, Carla Satensky. Carla has been, she was on the founding board of this organization.
Sure.
And you've made it possible for all of us to do something even bigger, and that is to win national awards this year. You know, we've won the National Association of Telecommunication Operators and Associations, which is the acronym is NATOA.
Right.
And we won one of the largest awards, which is for social media. Everyone knows Sonia Burke, who's our multimedia manager, phenomenal reporter, and we were able to hone with her and her team one of the highest awards in the country, social media. And then in our partnership with the Montgomery County Public Schools and the Gaithersburg, the Gazette newspaper
Right.
in Gaithersburg, and also, believe it or not, with Prince George County, together, their public schools, we were able to do My Favorite Teacher, which
Right.
everybody knows, My Favorite
Right.
Teacher.
Right.
And we won the National PSA Award for My
Fantastic.
Favorite Teacher.
Good.
So you think about what we have done in 30 years, connecting all of these people. It's been phenomenal. And you know, we invite everybody to become active. We are teaching the next generation in backpack journalism.
I was going to ask you about that. So what kind of inventory do you have of time available for new shows?
We are always welcoming people to make their contributions, and especially because many people create content on YouTube now, and many people are creating their own shows. You can take those shows, put them into the format that you can easily go into our website and find, and contribute your content here. We are your voice. We are your home. This is what we've done for 30 years.
You know, some years ago, I created a show called Global Montgomery, highlighting people who we don't see. I mean, these unbelievable leaders around the world who are just our neighbors for us who are living in the community. And it ran for a number of years. We got national awards, but it was something that just from my heart, and then teaming up with the great Marian Merowitz and together with these great volunteers and staff. So it's something that if you have a sense that you want to do something, this is one of the most accommodating places that in the world. You all bend over backwards for quality programming.
You know, I look when we talk about the next generation of bringing
You got
content.
25 seconds.
We take someone like Michelle Chavez, a young woman who comes here. She takes her experience in backpack journalism, uses that and goes and leverages it into a full 4-year scholarship at the University of Maryland.
Yep.
And while she's there, she has a 4-year contract with C-SPAN
Right.
while she's in college. That happened here.
And you know what happens here? The last word. Thank you very much.
Thank you for everything.
Appreciate it. And thank all of you for joining me today. And thank all of you in the viewing audience for joining us for this week's edition of Montgomery Week in Review. I'm Don Mooers, inviting you to join us same time next week, right here, for our next program.